Welcome to another edition of our JMM Expert Insights Series. Today we are joined by Nathan Smith, CEO of Neuroscientific. Nathan, thanks for joining us.
It's great to be here. Thanks, Jane.
Look, Nathan, for those who don't know the Neuroscientific story, can you just give us a bit of an overview of the company and perhaps the core mission which is driving the company's work?
Sure. Neuroscientific's core mission is to treat unmet medical needs with patented stem cell technologies that we're developing.
And look, I think maybe even just explain a little bit more on that. And in very simple terms, what are these stem cells and why are they so critical in treating some of the more complex immune and inflammatory conditions that the company is targeting?
Sure. Our stem cell technology platform is obtained from adult bone marrow. And the great thing about these cells is that as we grow them up and then use them as treatment in patients, they have a very strong anti-inflammatory effect. And so because of that, we can go after diseases with severe to high inflammation where patients don't have treatment options. And really that's one of the core values here, is to be able to give these patients a solution that help them with their quality of life and to deal with some diseases that can be very debilitating.
Well, I think just further to that then, so what are the key markets that you're addressing? And I mean, I know the latest message actually covers Crohn's disease, kidney transplant patients, and I think the potential for rejection or complications there. But can you give us a little bit more of an overview of how the company is targeting conditions and markets, or more simply, what are the unmet needs that you're addressing?
Sure. So Neuroscientific, actually, this product, the StemSmart product, has already been through a large number of early phase clinical trials and clinical studies. Included in those clinical studies were for refractory Crohn's disease, graft versus host disease, kidney transplant rejection, lung transplant rejection, COPD, and a number of other indications, really focused again around indications where you have high to severe inflammation, right? And looking at those disorders, we've been able, through the data that we have from earlier phase clinical trials, to go after key market segments and segments that we think are going to be successful for commercialization down the line. Right now, the priority is going to be refractory Crohn's disease because, again, that's where we have some fantastic data, and we're already moving forward with the special access program for compassionate use in patients. But we're heavily looking into other indications, again, where we have strong data that then can back up further clinical trials and commercialization.
So Nathan, let's just deep dive into the StemSmart platform. There's been a lot of recent company developments that have been announced to the market, but can you walk us through what StemSmart is exactly and why it's such an important technological advancement?
So StemSmart is our patented manufacturing process that results in a differentiated stem cell. It's actually an upregulated stem cell that has differentiated from other products in the product class. StemSmart, because it's upregulated and humanized prior to treatment in patients, when it gets into the body, it really focuses on areas of severe to high inflammation. And so the higher the inflammation, the better these cells react. And so it's such a great technology and has such great efficacy within the human body and has been demonstrated in clinical trials that we think that there's a really great solution, again, for patients that don't have treatment options and have unmet medical needs in these disorders with severe inflammation.
And just further to that, then again, and you did touch on this earlier, but the company is doing some studies to examine the effects of the StemSmart platform. So what are the early results kind of showing when it comes to the effectiveness with conditions perhaps like Crohn's disease?
Yep. So the early phase clinical studies, specifically in Crohn's disease, for example, we were treating patients that had refractory Crohn's. These are patients that had failed previous lines of treatment, and that includes antibiotics, steroids, and even biologic drugs like some of the blockbusters like Humira and Stelara. These patients, when treated with StemSmart, actually 78% of the patients had a clinical response, and that clinical response is dictated by an index that all of the gastroenterologists use to determine uh, severity of Crohn's. And so 78% clinical response is a huge response rate for patients that didn't respond to conventional therapies. On top of that, over 50% of those patients went into clinical remission. So according to the gastroenterologist, they no longer had Crohn's disease because of this product. And so with off the strength of those early phase clinical trials, we know that these cells work. Now it's just taking it through the clinical phase, the phase 2, phase 3, and commercialization pathway, so that we can get this product out into the market.
Okay, so just further to that, then again, you recently received TGA approval for use of StemSmart under that special access program. So I think just to reiterate, how is this going to help the company its progression towards, what's next for the clinical trials?
So the special access program that we're doing under the TGA is where we work very closely with gastroenterologists to provide the StemSmart product to these doctors for patients for use and under compassionate use grounds. And right now we've been working with doctors and clinicians focusing on fistulizing Crohn's, a very debilitating subset of Crohn's disease where patients actually form fistulas within their digestive tract. And they don't, again, like their only option is surgery. So we're trying to work with the doctors to treat these patients, and they have to apply to the TGA to get approval because the product StemSmart isn't a marketed product. So because it's an experimental product, they have to apply to the TGA for approval to be able to use that on patients. And so getting this approval for the use of StemSmart demonstrates that the TGA understands and again is approving for these gastroenterologists to treat patients with our technology. And what that does for us is the data that comes from that will help inform our future phase 2 study that's happening towards the end, that's going to initiate by the end of next year. On top of that, what it does is actually helps boost the confidence, number one, within the gastroenterology community and the clinician community, but also within the Crohn's community, the patient community. And we want to support those communities because obviously as we move into phase 2, we're going to want high enrollment, and this would help actually create momentum within those communities.
Absolutely. And look, I think another announcement you put out recently is that you formed that partnership with QGen
Right.
for manufacturing at that sort of larger scale. So why is scale and development to this manufacturing process so important at this stage of the company?
Yeah, so for any stem cell product, and again, this gets into any cell therapy product, right? In the CAR Ts, into mesenchymal stem cells or other types of stem cells that are out there. Manufacturing is key, right? Because secure supply chain and making sure that you have enough product to go out there. I mean, we saw that in the past. Mesoblast had issues with supply. We know that Novartis had issues with their CAR T supply, things like that. So we're trying to stay ahead of that, make sure that we have, developed a strong partnership with QGen, which is one of the largest contract manufacturing organizations in Australia, and working with them to further develop this technology and to ensure that we have a secure source of supply, again, puts us in a great place for the phase 2 study, the phase 3 study, and beyond. In addition, right, the key piece for this product is that the fact that you can take bone marrow from a donor and manufacture a number of products that then go out to a bunch of patients and can be used as an off-the-shelf product. Now, the more product that we can make out of one bone marrow drives down the cost per dose. And again, if we can get that cost per dose down to, say, $2,000 cost per dose, right? I mean, Mesoblast, off their approval late last year, they're getting reimbursed for 1.5 million per dose for their graft versus host disease product. If you can think about that, right? The profit, then that helps, the commercialization pathway and really looking at how, viable a product this is down the line.
Nathan, look, I think in your opinion, what would you say success looks like for Neuroscientific for, let's say, the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, so success will be finishing up the fistulizing Crohn's study that will happen. We'll probably end that mid next year. initiation of the phase 2 trial in refractory Crohn's that will start at the end of next year, and then seeing successful results through the phase 2 allows us to partner for a larger phase 3 study down the line, and then that will take us through commercialization. Look, we know the cells work. We just need to make sure that we're designing the clinical trials well, and that we're getting the right data, and getting the right results. And so, as we progress and as we get positive results all the way through, commercialization pathway somewhere in 2030 or early 2031 would be where we would be looking at, ideally what success would look like for this type of product. And then on top of that, going into other markets, right? Going into other indications and driving clinical trials there. So that's where I see a successful 3 to 5 years for us, and that's what we're working towards and trying to put ourselves in the best chance of success.
And Nathan, just lastly, so what should shareholders and potential investors be looking forward to from a news flow perspective, probably in the near term?
Yeah, so the number one, we'll be announcing, we're still on target to announce the results from the first 4 patients for the special access program by the end of the year. And so that'll be the big readout. And then the results of the overall program, we're gonna wrap that up mid-year next year. So those would be the two kind of the data results. On top of that, we are in the process of starting the development of our phase 2 trial. And so we'll be engaging with CROs and regulatory consultants. So we'll announce that to the market as well. And on top of that, how we continue to transfer the manufacturing to QGen. So we'll continue to supply the market with updates to how all the work that we're doing in the background, to ensure that we are ready for that phase 2 trial. And again, putting ourselves in the best scenario so that we can succeed.
Nathan, I really want to thank you for your time today. I mean, there's exciting things happening on the horizon. So NSB is the ticker code there, but thanks again for joining us.
Thanks, Jane. It was great.